Hello and welcome back. I am Chris with Marksman Shooting Sports in Westfield, Indiana. You are watching Marksman TV. Welcome back to another weekly used gun review. Remember, in these videos, I take about 8 used firearms that have come into our store by customers and give you guys about a 3 to 4 minute micro review of each to give you guys an idea of some things that are out there on the market. Remember, the purpose of this video is strictly to be educational and for entertainment. We are not making this video to market or sell you anything. Anyway, with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into it now. Alright guys, remembering the format of this video, we start off with most common and move through least common as the video progresses. This is actually going to be a pretty cool video. I've got some pretty unique stuff in this one, but starting off with the number one spot. You know it's going to be a good video when the number one spot is something like an HK VP9, but that's what this is, an HK VP9, VP standing for Volks pistol. It is a German-made HK firearm, which came out on the market in 2014. Now, you guys know I've had these on these shows before, and this, I would say, as far as modern handguns go, the VP9 definitely ranks in my top 5. So HK has always been known for putting out very high quality police and military oriented firearms, really duty and service, submachine guns, battle rifles, assault rifles, handguns. That's what I'm talking about, the fully automatic counterparts. And of course, then they have their semi-automatic counterparts for the consumer market, the watered down, thumb hole stock versions like the UMCs and things like that. But anyway, they've always been known as having very high price tags. What HK had done in 2014 is they came out with this to really compete with things in the polymer $500 to $600 price point handguns, and it did so very effectively. These things had hit the market right when we opened the store, and they were a very popular seller. In fact, they still are today. They have interesting features like a ambidextrous paddle magazine release. Now, they do have a B model, which has, sorry, just had somebody come in, but the B model had a push button magazine release. Then they had the LE version with the 3 mags and the night sights. These actually come with a luminescent night sights, so they do need a light charge to glow in the dark, but that's what they came with standard. Now, on the new market, these were traditionally priced at about the $589 mark up to about the $620, depending on where you found it and what variation it was used. You typically find them between about $450 and $500 respectively. New, of course, actually the pricing with what's going on right now is even going higher than what it was. So, I mean, people are asking $700, $800 for these things used right now, so the pricing's ridiculous. But if you wait however many years it'll take for the pricing to come back down, that's about where you should be, is about the $450 to $500 price point on these. 2 15-round magazines, polymer frame. It is essentially the striker-fired version of the USP models that, of course, are double single action. Very, very popular handguns, very gentle shooting, nice ergonomics, interchangeable side plates and back straps. They came with 2 magazines, of course, in this version, or the 3 magazines in the LE package, but just an overall really, really cool firearm. Love to see these things come in. Always a favorite of mine. Definitely worth taking a look if you see one. All right, up next, I have an Enfield number 4 Mark I. This one has been sporterized. Now, this was famously used by Great Britain in the Second World War, as well as the Canadians and the Australians. Now, the Australians kept the number 1 Mark III pattern, which is the same pattern used by the British in World War I. In World War II, the British would redesign into this configuration, not really this configuration, because this one's been sporterized. The Canadians as well. Now, in Canada, they would be manufactured at Long Branch. In the UK, they would be manufactured at BSA, Birmingham Small Arms, and ROF, Fazakerley. In Australia at Lithgow, and even in the United States at Savage for the Lend-Lease program. The United States manufactured them for Lend-Lease to Great Britain as well in the Second World War before the US got involved themselves. But anyway, chambered in the 303 British. Now, like I had mentioned, this has been sporterized, and the original rifle would have a full-length stock out to about here with a handguard. The ears have been removed on the front end. Now, this was a very common practice in and around the late 40s, 50s, and 60s, because you could pick up these old war guns for next to nothing at hardware stores, maybe for $3, $4, $5, $6, and then people would turn them into hunting rifles. They would popularly or commonly, rechamber them to things like 30-06. cut down the weight by removing parts of the stock, removing the handguard, you know, things that weren't really needed to take out as a deer gun, and you could have a really inexpensive option. That was a very common practice, so it is very common to see these sporterized firearms. Now, unfortunately, because of that, a lot of the collectability has been stripped off of the firearm, and really what's left is either a project for somebody to restore back to its original military configuration, or if somebody wants to use it as a modern day deer gun, which there's really nothing wrong with. Now, the problem still being chambered in .303 is the ammunition is a little bit tough to get, and it is on the expensive side. I mean, it's not unreasonable. PPU makes it for about $1 a round, which honestly, for most, your 30-06 and .308 hunting loads are going to be in the similar price point. .303 is a rimmed cartridge, really, really nice ballistics, 30 caliber, similar to, you know, what you're going to get with 30-06. 10-round detachable box magazine, and let's see if I get that out. Now, one thing about the Enfield that's a little bit different from the other rifles of the era is it does cock on close as opposed to cocking on open. So it had a really quick throw. This has got a lot of grease and stuff in it. And the British troops could actually get a lot of ammunition downrange very quickly. So, I mean, that's really what it was popular for. One of, or touted to be one of the best battle rifles of World War II. A lot of people would argue it was the best, even superior to the M1 Garand. I'll let you guys have that argument down in the comment section, but undoubtedly a really, really nice firearm. Now, the original guns in their original configuration and matching, depending on what plan it was made at, right now are going for between about $400 to $600, depending on condition and where it was made. A sporterized gun like this, about $200 to $300 is pretty typical. Again, a good project where somebody gets an original wood stock set. Really, for this, all you would need is an original wood stock set. And if you wanted to replace that front sight base where it still has the protective wings on it, then you would be, you know, back with a pretty decent, you know, Enfield. So probably a stock set's 150, 200 bucks. And then, you know, again, that's about all you would need. But anyway, really, really cool rifles. Love to see stuff like this come in. Yeah, number 4 Mark 1 Enfield. Okay, up next is another rifle from the Second World War, this one coming out of Japan. This is an Arisaka Type 99, chambered in 7.7, what they call 7.7 Jap. Okay, the Type 99 would basically come out of the Type 38, which was a much longer rifle. It would come out to about maybe here, and was also chambered in the 6.5. The Type 38 had been used around the World War I era and through the Indochina War. So when Japan was gearing up for World War II, they wanted something that was a little bit more battle hardened for the conflicts that would ensue in the island hopping campaigns in the Pacific. There were basically two criterion, or two things that they really wanted to fix about the Type 38. One was its overall length. So like I mentioned, the Type 38 was a very long rifle. If you put the bayonet on it, actually, and stand it up on it, it would actually stand taller than the typical Japanese soldier at the time. For jungle fighting campaigns, the large unwieldy rifle was a little bit cumbersome, so they wanted something much more short, ergonomic, and compact, which was actually what a lot of countries were doing at the time. Germany was doing the same thing, going from their Gewehr 88 to the K98, getting a much shorter package. So that was just sort of a normal, typical thing that we saw happening around World War II. The other thing was the round. The Type 38 was in 6.5. The Type 99 was in 7.7, as mentioned. The 6.5 was a very anemic, very low velocity round, which of course obviously was still very lethal, but not good for long range accurate shooting. There would actually not even be muzzle flash because most of all of the powder was burned by the time the projectile even left the barrel. So it wasn't as potent as a round as something like the 7.7. And 7.7 was more in line with things that other countries were using, like the .303, the 30-06, and the 8mm. And of course, we're in a smaller package. Now, these would come out in time for World War II, and this is predominantly what the Japanese infantry was armed with. Of course, there are still plenty of people armed with the Type 38s. In fact, one of the logistical issues with the Japanese military was they had so many different firearms and so many different calibers. You had the Type 38s, which fired the 6.5, which was the same as their Type 97 sniper rifles, their Type 11 and Type 96 light machine guns. Then you had the Type 99, which was in the 7.7, which was the same as the Type 99 light machine gun. Then you had the Type 92 heavy machine gun chambered in a semi-rimmed 7mm cartridge, 7.7 cartridge. You had the derivatives off of the Japanese Lewis type guns, which used on aircraft, which used a 303 rimmed casing. I know there's some spillover in different uses between the rounds. The pistols were chambered in 8mm Nambu. The baby Nambus were, I think, 7mm Nambu. So you had like 8 or 9 different cartridges that the military was supplied with, as opposed to, say, the United States, which basically had a 30-06, a 30 carbine, and a 45 ACP. Germany, which used the 8mm Mauser and the 9mm. Great Britain with the 303 British, and their revolvers were 38s with the Weston. They called them something else. I can't remember what the Webleys and the little Enfield Mark IVs were chambered in, but like a 38 caliber revolver. So most countries were down to 2, maybe 3 calibers. Japan had many multiples. But anyway, getting into the value of these. Now this one here is an all-matching bolt and an the rest of the rifle is all matching. We've been over this before with German Mausers, but on the Arisaka it was very similar. When they surrendered at the end of the war, they would basically take the bolt out of the action, throw the bolts in one pile, the actions in the other, and then American troops, when they went to pick them up as war trophies, they would grab a bolt out of one pile, the rest of the rifle out of the other, put the bolt back in the gun, and then they'd take it home. So it's likely what happened here. No import marks or anything like that. The other common thing to see was a ground chrysanthemum. The chrysanthemum was the mark of the Emperor Hirohito, which at the end of the war, as a conditional part of the surrender of Japan, they were asked, Japanese soldiers and U.S. soldiers taking these to please deface the chrysanthemum, the imperial mark, basically the property mark of Hirohito, so that the property of the emperor was not falling into the hands of the enemy, sort of thing. So those who followed the order did remove or scrub off the chrysanthemum, which happened in most cases. So most of them will not have that on there. In the condition it sits, typically $300 to $400 is about right, and all matching with the chrysanthemum, upwards of $600, $700, $800, $900 if it's an early one with a monopod. So the collectability, prices on these things are all over the place. This one's in really nice condition. In fact, aside from the fact it's mismatched and with no chrysanthemum, so in this, a good example of a Type 99, and I'm sure a good shooter. So anyway, there's another World War II rifle. All right, up next I have an interesting little Derringer from Remington. This is a Remington model 95 and would be produced by Remington between 1866 and 1935. Now, an interesting thing about this Derringer and Remington history is in 1888, Remington would actually file for bankruptcy and would be bought up by Hartley and Graham of New York. That was when they changed the name to Remington Arms Co. Before that, it was Remington and Sons. Now, that would be what would mark this particular one as a third pattern, because at the top of the rib of the barrels here is actually marked as Remington Arms Co. Elliott, New York. So this one was actually manufactured after the repurchasing or the restructuring of the Remington Arms Company. So there you go. Now this is a Derringer with a locking barrel that opens up. You have 2 rounds, and then you have an extractor on the left side of the barrel. That was also a feature of the third variation, the little cutout. I think they called it an extractor cutout version of this. Now they would make these in either nickel or blued. This one's blued, and they also had an engraved version. They had them in wood, hard rubber, which is what this is, ivory, and pearl grips. Of course, the pricing and the value of each one would change. The rubber is probably the least desirable of all of the ones that were made. This was also chambered in a 41 rimfire, so not easy to get the ammunition today if you do pick one of these up and look to use it. As mentioned, they would cease production on this in 1935. Now, it was this model, that would basically create the whole Derringer mystique and allure within pop culture. It was basically this model right here is where it all started. Value on these things, because of that sort of the pop culture references, these are actually pretty collectible, even though they're not quite usable because of the availability of ammunition or whatnot. These actually do get up and about anywhere between $300 and $500, depending on, of course, the grip configurations, the condition, things like that. This one I'm sure would probably be in about maybe the $300 to $400 price point would be what I would suspect. The barrel is a little bit, or the bore is a little bit rough in both barrels here. Overall, I mean, it's got original bluing on it, but a lot of it's worn off. It's probably at about 50% condition. So anyway, still a really cool, iconic little piece from the past. Really cool to get this in. Now this one, the next gun you're about to see, and the one after that were actually all three brought in by the same seller, who was actually a viewer of the channel and not local. I think he said he came in from Illinois. He was here on other business and he brought his guns along knowing that we were in the area. So thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to buy those guns from you and get them in these videos. I hope you enjoy seeing them in here. But anyway, just wanted to give him a shout out starting this one off. We'll get into the next one. Okay, up next is a pretty interesting little Derringer. This is a Remington Elliott's Derringer, also known as a ring trigger Derringer, also known as a pepper box. These were made between about 1868 and 1888. My suspicion was that they were discontinued due to the, of course, repurchasing and rebranding of Remington. In fact, it is marked on the top, manufactured by Remington and Sons. So again, back before they went out of business and were purchased up. These were made in a 22 short, which is this one, which has a cluster of 5 barrels. They were also made in a 32, which had a cluster of 4 barrels. You have a little pin down here at the bottom. You pull forward and lift it up. You load your rounds and then close and pop that back into place to lock the barrel. And then you're ready to fire. The little ring trigger pops forward. I'm not going to do this very much, but you feel that spring tension there and pull through and it fires. And then to reset the trigger, you just move it forward with your finger and like that. And then it's prepared to fire a second time. Now inside, and I think I'm going to have to pull this again. Yeah, I'm going to have to pull this again, but inside there is a little wheel with a striker, and that wheel, as you turn it, rotates it into the different positions behind each primer. So kind of an interesting design feature here. These were popular with gamblers as just a vest pocket concealed carry firearm in about the mid to late 1800s. So again, I do not know very much about these beyond the history of that. They were made in a blued and a nickel. This one was, of course, blued and has wood grips. The grips are actually in great shape. The bluing is at about 50%, maybe 45 to 50%, with the rest of it turning to a brown patina. The value on these, I've looked, are pretty much all over the place. Whether it's a 32 or a 22, I mean, I've seen, I gotta say the most expensive one I saw was like a 99% condition matching in the box with nickel finish, which went on Morphe's auction for about $4,000. But that's the top and the top and the top of the market. Something like this, you know, several $100s, probably the $400 to $500 range would be my guess. But you know, there's just not a lot of sales data on these, so it's very interesting. I've never had one in here before. Just a cool, unique firearm. Being in the time frame that it was made, this is an antique and is FFL free. So you know, you buy one of these, you just get it shipped to your house, or you should be able to walk out of the gun store with it. But very cool, unique firearm I've never seen before. I just love to get this type of stuff in. Very cool. Okay, up next is a really cool one from that same collection. Again, same owner as the previous two you just saw. This is a Remington Beals model 1858 36 caliber New Navy revolver. And this revolver, along with the 44 version, the New Army, and the Colt model 1860 would make up the primary supply of handguns, revolvers that were used by the Union Army in the Civil War here in the United States. Now, the Beals patent guns, they would basically be the early guns. They made about 1,900 of them before they were just the Remington. And the model 1858 is kind of a misnomer. That's what people called the model because of the patent date. Typically, they were just known as the New Army or the New Navy, okay, depending on the caliber. They also had a pocket version, I don't know, or a smaller caliber version. I don't remember offhand which one that was. Now this one, out of the 1,900 guns, this is actually a 3-digit serial number, number 404, and it is all matching. So it's a really cool gun. It's most of the original finish, actually pretty much all of it's gone, which is pretty much just left with patina. It is functional. Very, very nice. Now, I don't do much with, you know, black powder, muzzle loader, cap and ball type firearms here, but this is a really cool one, and it is classified as an antique as well. Beals patent, basically what it was is you have your little loading rod here, and underneath there is a pin that keeps the cylinder held captive. Now prior to that, like on the Colt versions, you would actually have to take off the entire barrel assembly off the front to be able to then slide the cylinder out the front. So because of this, it was actually, if you wanted to, you could keep 4, 5, 6 different cylinders preloaded, and then while you're in the field, you could just pull this pin, drop the cylinder out, like, see if I'm doing this right. Oh, the ramrod's in there, that's why. Put that back in. As you can tell, I am not a trained Union soldier. Drop the cylinder out. You then get your replacement cylinder, drop it back in, get into alignment. All the while you're being shot at, and you're hopefully have a lot better training than I do. Let's see, there we go. And then drop that pin back in, and then you're back in action. Even that as a process would be a lot faster than manually reloading each cylinder between reloads. So interesting design concept there, and would remain to be a very popular and sort of a game changer in the sort of moving forward in the revolver manufacture and design. So a really nice piece of Civil War history, very popular handgun used. Now, even though this is an early Beals patent 1858 revolver, they are not super expensive, especially in this condition. If you want to pick one up, of course, because it is an antique, you know, $44.73, you could get it shipped right to your house. But something like this in this condition, I would say more than $500, less than $1,000, somewhere right there in the middle, maybe $700 mark might be a benchmark for this. Some are in better condition, some are in worse. There is some surface pitting, and but it is a really, really cool piece of Americana, a really cool piece of history. So I'm happy to get this and to share it with you on this video. So yeah, a Remington Beals 1858 Navy. Okay, up next is a very popular and very iconic firearm from HK. This is the HK SP5K pistol, chambered in 9mm. Move this out of the way. So what you essentially have here is a civilian version 9mm pistol of the popular MP5K. K standing for Kurtz. Okay, so it is a shortened receiver version of the MP5. Now the MP5 would come onto the scene in 1967, being developed by HK and adopted by the German military and police forces in the late 60s. Now, even though it is a design out of the 60s, it is touted today as being probably one of the best and most successful submachine guns that has ever been created, and is still used all over the world today. This was actually introduced by HK at the 2018 SHOT Show as a US civilian legal version of the MP5 or the MP5K. Now, it would have a release MSRP of about $2,600. Typically, you've never been able to really find them that cheap because in the fashion of HK, they're more popular and desirable firearms they do not put out with relative frequency. Right now, these things are going up over $3,000. Now, as many of you know, within about the past year, they did release another version of this in the standard MP5 configuration, a little bit of a longer barrel, which of course are also very difficult to get. Now, this uses all standard MP5 magazines and are compatible with the furniture, so you can take off this back plate and put on a brace. SP Tactical makes them. Also a actual SP5K or MP5K, I'm sorry, stock. Now, the original MP5K was actually designed to be carried and used in this configuration. You would have a bungee sling, which you would wrap over one shoulder and then carry it underneath a coat or something like that for concealability. So this is actually the configuration that this was designed to be used in, but of course they did issue them with stocks as well. And like I said, you can get a stock if you want to SBR it. Now, this is a roller delayed blowback action. Very iconic. You have your charging handle here. The original one, the submachine gun version, did operate on a closed bolt. Draw that to the rear. Of course, you have the famous HK slap. I'm not going to do that here, but drop that. Now, this has a 30-round detachable magazine. Now, one of the things with this versus the new one that they just released is the original MP5 had a paddle magazine release. This one did not have that. It only works on a push button, but the new one does have a paddle. Hand stop right up here at the front. Standard HK diopter sights. A very simple, straightforward design. Very popular. Now, as mentioned before, we do not see these very often. I've actually, even back when supply was readily available, it was very tough to get things like this or the new release MP5 or SP5, I'm sorry, or the SP5K. Always pretty tough to get, always been pretty valuable and pretty expensive. Now, this was actually brought in by the same guy who brought in the VP9 that you just saw and another HK product that's coming up. So he was a collector of HKs. He said he did not fire this or the next one you're about to see, so this one's an excellent condition. So really not a lot else to say about it. Really, really cool. If you are, either a shooter, very cool, ergonomic, or just a collector, this is really the only way you can get into a true, MP5 version as a civilian, unless you want to drop, $30,000 to $40,000 on a transferable machine gun version. Now, if you don't want to spend the $2,000 to sometimes upwards of $4,000, even $5,000 for something like this. There are a couple other manufacturers who did come out with MP5 clones. Zenith had one, PTR came out with one, and those will typically run you in about the high teens, low twos, depending on where you find them. So really, really cool. Glad to get something like this in. Of course, you know, always buyers looking for HK equipment like this. All right, last but not least, I have a really cool product here from HK. And again, this was brought in by the same gentleman who brought in the VP9 and the SP5K. This is, if I can find the zippers. So I should operate the case before I operate the gun, right? This is a HK MR556A1. I'm gonna pull it out of here and be right back with you. All right, so the HK MR556A1, essentially what you have here is a civilian, legal 16-inch barreled version of the popular HK model 416. So the 416 would start with the United States Army Delta Force, and they wanted a new sort of PDW close-in CQB type rifle platform to replace. It was either at the time you either have something like an MP5, which is a pistol caliber submachine gun, which of course you guys just saw, or you have something like an M4, which is a little bit larger, still works on a DI, direct impingement gas system. What they wanted is something in a subcaliber, I'm sorry, not a subcaliber, but an intermediate caliber cartridge like the 5.56, and a much smaller package is something that was very reliable and did not require that much maintenance. So what they did is HK would work with them in development of what eventually turned into the 416, which was a very short barrel which worked on a G36 style gas operated or a gas piston system with a push rod or a gas piston rod to actuate the system. Hardened steel interface right up here for the push rod to interact with, and of course because of that piston system you're keeping carbon and other type of trash from the gunpowder residue or whatever out of the receiver, which is again going to lead to better durability. When you go into a piston system you are getting a little bit more weight, especially up here on the front end, but you're saving yourself from all of that carbon fouling in the receiver, which on something like an AR-15 platform does have very tight tolerances. Okay. Other cool features about this, you can remove, unthread this pin and pop it out, and then the whole handguard system just slides right off the front. If you want to change it out to something else, it also gives you direct access to your gas system as well up here at the front. So the MR556A1, okay, so the typical retail price on something like this is in about the mid-2000 range, but of course HK being HK, not putting out a whole lot of their product into the market, especially now with availability being what it is. These things tend to go around the $3,000 price point right now, new or used. Now this one, again, likely was unfired, does not look like it's been fired, in an excellent condition. Now the 416 would be in development throughout the 1990s and would go into service in about 2004, and it's actually still used today all around the country. So a very popular PDW weapon system. HK would come out with the MR556. It was around 2015, but again, they are very far and few between. They're not as easy to find. Again, like a lot of HK's more desirable products. So if you are looking for something with that sort of military mystique, the you know, the Delta Force usage or the lineage of a military or special operations PDW, the MR556 A1 is a really good option. Now, of course, you could swap out a barrel probably to a 416. I actually haven't looked that up. You could probably switch it out to a 416 profile if you wanted to SBR it and really make it a non-fully automatic 416. But other than that, the ergonomics are awesome. The weight is good. The balance is good. Of course, it is a little front end heavy with this sort of quad rail or the key mod front handguard and that gas system up here at the front, but still a really, really nice carbine. They are very highly, you know, touted, very highly regarded, as most HK products are. Just really cool. Never had one in before, and happy to get this one in here to share it with you. Well, that is all the time I have for you today on these. Thank you so much for stopping by and checking out this video. If you enjoyed, please let me know by hitting that like button. Also, remember, I upload these videos every single week, so make sure to hit that subscribe button and also that bell notification so you are aware when new videos are being posted. Anyway, guys, I'm going to leave you off there. I am Chris with Marksman Shooting Sports in Westfield, Indiana. You are watching Marksman TV. I will see you next time.